Well, welcome Impact community to our webinar tonight. We appreciate you joining us for a few minutes. It's going to be well worth it. We're going to have some fun. There's been a lot of buzz and excitement about this webinar, so we're going to get right into it. My name is Eric Welch. I am a co-founder of MPACT Project and your host for this evening. And we have a lot of our Impact advocates and funders joining us tonight. We've got a lot of emails and Facebook notes asking about tonight, because people are excited to meet one of the leaders, founders, and inventors of Estufas Chispa, our awesome cook stoves that we are providing in Guatemala. And so we're going to get right into that. If you are new and you're just discovering our movement and what we're all about, I know there's a lot of people sharing what's going on here. So if you're new, welcome. MPACT Project is a next generation crowdfunding platform that empowers you and people like you, purpose-driven people, to grow lives of dignity and meaning and purpose and abundance and generosity, and for yourself and for people in other places such as Guatemala, where we're developing communities, and we're going to hear about that tonight, what that's like. And if you've never been to a place like Guatemala, you're going to get a mini mission trip tonight. In a way, we'll get a little sense of what life is like there. So thank you for learning a bit about our community and being a part of this tonight. So let's get right into it. It's my pleasure to welcome a fellow social entrepreneur and a mechanical engineer and inventor and change maker to the webinar, Mr. Malcolm Gribble, and he's the general director and co-founder of, I'm going to practice my Spanish, Soluciones Apropiadas.
Pretty good.
It's a social enterprise that makes our cook stoves, Estufas Chispa, and so we are doing some great things in Guatemala in a partnership with what they've been doing there in a while. And quick story, when I first met Malcolm, I think what struck me was that he had this great passion and understanding and a belief in how much of a difference a cook stove could make in the lives of women and children. And it was all kind of new to me, and you'll hear more about that tonight. But especially because you're not Guatemalan, right? So it seemed very interesting to me. You had this deep passion and understanding about this problem. So we want to talk a little bit about tonight, like how you started and how you got here. But thanks, Malcolm, for joining us tonight and taking some time with us.
Thank you.
So you said you wanted to kind of give us a tour for a minute before we jump into it?
Yeah, if you're up for it. Let me switch the camera around. Okay. This is my to-do list, which is ever growing. Currently working on some a new cook stove design at the moment. And this is our office space, Chispa headquarters. This is my chair made out of a crate. It's a nice space. We've just had a big downpour and a lightning show for us, and I don't know if you can see out there, but setting up for a nice sunset. So we've got views of the volcanoes out the window, and all pretty cool. Here's one of the stoves in the office that we use to prepare coffee on. We don't light it up here because we don't have permission to drill holes in the roof. But we do all our proper testing downstairs. Okay, it's about 6 o'clock, so you can't really see too much. Here, we have a load of stoves that will be painted tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
So I think there's about 20 on the floor here that are just getting ready to be painted. Everyone's gone home at the moment, so they'll be back in the morning. Here we've got the raw materials. This is the pumice we use for the insulation inside the stove, so that's volcanic pumice. I think this has changed a bit since you've been here, Eric. So this is the metal working area. We've got the plasma table where we do all the plasma cutting. A nice 20-foot long workbench for more metal work, welding stations. Over here we have some stoves in their molds. So these were made today, and they're curing now underneath the plastic, and they will be demolded tomorrow, and then we will cure for a week. Can you still hear me okay?
Yep, you're great.
And here we have some stoves that are ready to be shipped out the door. They're going to be going Saturday. We're sending 90 stoves up into the Highlands. And as you can see, we're running out of space a bit here. So my testing area is being shrunk down to the corner. So it's limited the amount of space that I'm allowed to use at the moment. But this is quite interesting. We have a furnace inside here that we're using for testing bricks, and we're going to see if we can make some better quality bricks using this furnace. So it's using waste engine oil through a burner to burn at really high temperatures. This is a new stove that I'm working on. Done some testing today on that, cooking. This is a stove from the competition. So we've been testing like stoves that they sell in the market. And obviously we need to make sure that our products are a lot better than the cheap stuff you buy in the market. And then this is a bit more technical. That's our testing lab where we do all the emissions testing, and we can measure all of the nasty stuff inside the smoke. So that was the quick condensed tour.
Yeah, awesome. Well, while you're walking back up to your office, and I'm grateful that we're able to get some cell phone signal there. So hopefully, if we do have some technology issues, everyone will understand a little bit, since we are doing a broadcast live from Antigua, Guatemala. Like you said, you're surrounded by volcanoes and some storms. So maybe you could share a little bit. I'm sure people are a little bit curious. Where are you from? What's the backstory leading up to you finding yourself in Guatemala and doing what you're doing?
Okay, yep. You probably worked out I've got a strange accent. So I'm from the UK, and basically my story is that I studied mechanical engineering at the University of Bristol, and then took a job designing low energy buildings. So I was designing like the mechanical and electrical systems within sustainable buildings. So that was my focus really, sustainability. And then I learned about cook stoves, rocket stoves in particular, and immediately saw that as like a really simple solution to many people's problems. And my focus at the time was on sustainability. So I was more interested in carbon emissions and deforestation. So what happened next? I quit my job, and I chose Guatemala because my friend was getting married here, and I thought I would just combine the plane flight for the wedding to come here. So that was how I chose the country. I knew very little about the country. I thought it was actually in South America. And yeah, I managed to arrange an internship online before coming out, and went to the wedding, and then 2 weeks later started work there. And that was with Cookstoves, developing their designs. And a lot of that work was living with families and learning how people actually cook. So just observation sessions was really, really important. And then a load of lab testing, testing stoves and developing them. Then I got a job in Guatemala City doing the same thing. And started Chispa about 3 years ago now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's changed. Your facility there has changed a lot since I first saw it. It's really awesome to see how you're growing and things are advancing, and you're always improving. That's for sure. Every time you're there, I think you're working on a new variation of something.
Yeah. Every stove sale we make, we invest a bit more in equipment or inventory. So whenever money comes in, it goes back out again, but into growing the business. So we don't have, as a business, we don't have debts or large investors. So we're growing bit by bit in that manner.
Yeah. Okay. So I've, prior to coming to Guatemala for the first time, on that first trip is actually one of the early trips is when I met you first time. But, it's really hard to have a grasp of what it's like for families living in Guatemala. You just showed us the view, it's beautiful volcanoes and, it's a beautiful place, but it's very different if you live in the United States or the UK your whole life. How do you attempt to describe daily life, for the villages that we're serving, and maybe when you have friends in the States or in the UK, how do you describe that?
Well, yeah, when I came here, it was a shock, and I knew nothing about how people lived. I think my closest thing that I could relate to was campfires, which I love. And I thought, oh, it can't be that bad because everyone likes sitting around a fire. But then spending time with families and living inside people's houses was a real shock, because quickly you become very tired of the open fire, and it's unbearable. So lots of houses that we stayed in the beginning in this research phase, just a few minutes inside there, you had to leave the room crying, your eyes completely red, snot dribbling down your face, and trying to be polite to your guests at the same time. But even so, I've lived that just for a few days, but people live that day in, day out. And I suppose something that people don't really understand is how much time goes into cooking here. It's practically all day long that the stoves are running. So people tend to get up really, really early, and they'll cook their breakfast. And so the statistics are that over 90% of people in the country cook with firewood.
Wow.
And usually that's like the typical method of cooking is an open fire. Some people have that open fire on the ground. Sometimes it's raised up on a platform. And often that's income based. So the poorest families will be the ones cooking on the ground, and then slightly less poor will have a raised platform called a pollo, which still doesn't have a chimney. So I think that's one of the attractive things about cookstoves, is that it's really simple, and that's what drew me to it. Is just the simple act of putting a chimney in and improving the efficiency of the cookstove can have a really big impact.
Yeah.
And yeah, that goes all day long. It's the women who do the cooking, and they usually have children around them. And that can go maybe 5 in the morning till 10 at night, depending on the region. Some regions where it's colder, people use the stove for heating of the house as well. In the area we went to recently, that definitely wasn't required. So it varies a bit by region as well. But we've actually done testing where we leave sensors inside houses monitoring the air quality, and you can see on the graphs what time people start their breakfast and what time they finish cooking. Yeah.
Wow. I know you guys have worked, part of your development of your initial products, we're kind of a hybrid of a crowdfunding platform. You guys actually used crowdfunding as part of a initial launch, and in addition to having some grants from the UN, I believe, if I have that, if my memory serves me correct. And part of that was working with the Global Alliance for Clean Cookstoves, which is kind of a global think tank about this subject matter. And one of the the quotes I found, that they actually called the open fire cooking one of the root causes of poverty, and wondering what your thoughts were on that and why they would say that.
Well, a lot of families do purchase their firewood, so it's a big expenditure, both and with our cook stove, well, families using our cook stove consume less than half the amount, so they can be saving an average of 55% in their firewood. Sometimes that's up to 85%, but an average is about 55%. We explain to people that they'll use half the amount of wood. And obviously, if they're buying their firewood, then that's 50% saving in their fuel. Typically, that means about $20 a month, which for a family is a big amount of money. Yeah, that kind of saving. But also some of the other effects, like illnesses with the children. If children get sick or anyone gets sick, then there's money that can be spent on medicine as well. Just going to see a doctor or buying medicine.
One of the things that I found interesting that I wouldn't have made the connection is there's kind of a gender inequality issue with this whole thing, regarding women and girls. Can you kind of expand on that for a minute, of how it affects women differently than men in multiple ways?
Yeah, I mean, the women and also the children are the ones that are exposed to the smoke, and they are the ones cooking all day, every day, and also, unfortunately, they're the ones who are most susceptible to the problems caused by smoke as well. Yeah. So they're most exposed and most susceptible, and that's a big issue. I think the World Health Organization say that I think it's 4.3 million people globally die prematurely from smoke inhalation. And in Guatemala, it's about 5,000 premature deaths every year from indoor air pollution.
Well, and like a lot of things in poverty, right, there's like a ripple effects that go out from it. Kids miss school because they're out trying to gather firewood instead of buying it, or, different things like that as well. And then bad things can happen to kids when they're out on their own, especially girls, right? There's all kinds of issues with trafficking and things like that can kind of creep up as a part of a downstream effect of a central problem like this, which is, I never, when I started to read those things, hear those things, and we talked about that, it was interesting because it's easy to talk about the obvious, the health impacts, but you don't think of all the other ways that it creates a whole host of, or it's a foundational problem in lots of other ways as well. And, environmental impact is another big one. So obviously, if you're decreasing the amount of usage, it's a very direct impact there as well. Yeah.
So our stove can save around 10 tons of carbon dioxide emissions when you consider methane and other greenhouse gases. And to measure that, we've done tests where we measure the fuel consumption of a range of families using an open fire, and then we install our cook stoves, and then we repeat that test to see the reduction. And back to your other point about people collecting firewood, just a short drive through Guatemala, you're bound to see someone by the side of the road trekking along with a load of wood on their back. That job actually falls between men and women quite evenly, but it's definitely a job that people would rather not do. For some people, that's hours a day. Some people, the source is closer. But you often see here communities that have no trees around them. So people are walking to where the trees are and cutting, and that's getting further and further. There are, on the other side, I have heard stories of women quite enjoying time out cutting wood, time away from the family, but I think they're the minority.
It's not exactly the same as when women have girls' night out here. It's not quite the same as that, but it's
similar, yeah.
Oh yeah. So so when you put these in homes, it's an immediate change in, you know, the next fire they light, right, has a difference in the emissions and those things. What are the ways that you've been able to measure that, or what kind of metrics and things over time have you guys seen of the impact and how quickly and how it starts to show up in their lives?
Yeah, some of those things are quite difficult to measure and require very expensive studies to carry that out. But short term, if you go to visit the family after they've received a stove, then it's quite likely they'll comment about the biggest impact will be the smoke, obviously not in the house. The comments like, "I'm not crying anymore." I heard that one last week again. And I think a lot of people don't really realize actually that the smoke is that much of a problem. It's just how they live, it's their way of life, and they're kind of used to it. And it's only once you've installed the stove that they really realize what things were like beforehand. So that's a short-term one. Obviously, the fuel savings as well, they might take a little extra time to feel the impact of that. At the beginning, they'll say, "Oh yeah, I'm using a lot less firewood," and then maybe a month later, if people are buying every month, suddenly that amount of wood might last 2 months, and they'll be able to report on that. In terms of health benefits, long term, that's the kind of thing that's a bit beyond me in terms of testing. There are studies that have been done with cook stoves in the Highlands, with chimneys, but for us to do that isn't quite feasible. At the moment, our kind of limitation on that, or focus, is to make sure that all the smoke goes out the chimney, and we measure that using lab testing first, and we've shown that the stove removes 98–99% of all of the smoke. A little bit comes out when it's being lit, but pretty much everything goes out the chimney.
Yeah.
And we've also done some field testing as well to see if that lab testing reflects reality, which is all quite interesting.
Well, and it's interesting that you, with your background in engineering, and I remember you showing me some of the testing equipment things you have. I found it fun to watch the video where you kind of did your own self-experiment of living in, I believe it was day 8, something called day 18. And I thought maybe I'd play that for everyone for a minute, and that might help you or help us to kind of get a feel for it. I thought it was kind of a fun at your expense, because I didn't have to do it, but you did. So
okay, which one's this?
Hold on. I gotta get the right one here. I have, let's see. Are you seeing it?
Yep.
Okay, here.
Day 18, open fire cooking. Now, to make my kitchen a little bit more representative of a typical Guatemalan kitchen, I've sealed up one of the walls. There's a bit of space at the top for the smoke to escape, and this wall is half sealed, leaving a doorway. For this test, I'm going to be using this bit of test kit from the Aprovecho Research Center. That's going to measure carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and the particulates that are 2.5 microns or less. Those are the really nasty ones that cause damage to your lungs. Carbon monoxide, as you all know, is a poisonous gas. So we've weighed the wood, and we're going to measure how much wood we're using. And right now, I'm going to set the kit going for about 10 or 15 minutes, and it's going to measure the background readings of the air. That's so we can see what actually exists in the air before we start the fire. And then afterwards we can subtract that from the readings that we get to work out what effect the actual fire is having. So tonight, cooking solely down to me. Got the ingredients ready. No one else wants to enter my toxic tent. So I'm going to leave my dad chilling out to Dire Straits. And my mum's sewing. What are you saying, Mum?
Okay.
Lovely. Okay, we've done the background measurements. Now, the test kit is in my rucksack, and this little pipe attached to me is going to be sampling the air every 10 seconds, and it's going to get a good idea of what I'm actually breathing in. Oh, how interesting. Okay, I've just put 4 litres of water on there with the lid on to boil. We're going to see how long that takes. Then we're going to put the pasta in.
Is it fell in there?
Very smoky out here.
Don't you want to come in?
No.
Water boiling, onions frying, pasta's about to go in. I'm noticing the lack of ventilation. Yeah, it's a little bit different this time. So I went to try my pasta sauce, and I thought I put way too much salt in. Turns out it was just my snot. Nearly ready. The pasta sauce is simmering, and the pasta's nearly done, and I'm nearly done. The fire's dead, and the food is ready. All in all, quite a quick meal. My eyes feel a bit heavy, my nose sniffing, but it felt more representative of my experience of open fires in Guatemala. The end result, pretty good pasta dish.
Good. And it tastes good.
So it turns out you're quite the cook.
Well, yeah, my poor parents, they came to visit me, and I had to cook on an open fire for them.
Yeah.
I think the day before that, my mum did cooking as well. And while they could be enjoying nice restaurant food in Antigua, they had to cook on an open fire in my garden.
Well, so have you ever stopped and thought, like, how did I end up in this position doing what you're doing, as a social entrepreneur, and kind of, now that you've been kind of in that space for a while and you can kind of see things growing and happening, how does it feel? What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's still a bit of a shock. Sometimes I kind of wake up and look around and think, wow, what have we created? What's this monster we've created of a business? But I don't know, it was never my intention really to start a social business like this. At the beginning, it was just came up with a design of stoves based on what I believe people would like. And me and a friend, we started making a few in his garden, thinking that we could sell a few. And actually, before doing that, we went to a meeting with a large company here and tried to sell some stoves based on a 3D render on my computer, or that we printed out, trying to make people believe that it was a finished product and ready and everything. But it's just been like one step by step. And in the beginning, I didn't really think 3 years later I'd still be doing this, but things caught up, and we formed a team as well. So it's not just me anymore. So about, I think 2.5 years ago, Collin, my co-founder, we got together, and at the time I had maybe 5 or 10 stoves in use that we were following and monitoring and testing. And I was kind of thinking, well, I've spent all my savings. Is this worth doing? And together with Collin and also my ex-girlfriend and another friend of mine, we made the decision to go for it. But that was the tipping point. I was like, do I just give up now and say, well, it's been fun, or do we go for it? And that was the point that we kind of made the decision to be a social business like that.
Yeah.
And ever since then, it's been day by day, growing and growing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, you guys are doing some great things. I want to ask you a little bit about the stoves, but hopefully we can be a part of getting a lot of those stoves in the houses in the future, and hopefully we can create you some stress for giving you growing pains because you have to keep up with inventory.
That's good stress.
So,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
No, I'm quite happy to have lots of orders and be stressed out working hard. That's fine.
There's plenty of people there who will get jobs and learn how to make them, right?
Yeah. Right now we've got 7 people working here making stoves, and we're kicking out about 200 a month. But we think if we organize ourselves better, and we could push that up to 500 a month.
Wow.
And that would be our goal. So this year we've probably sold around 700.
Okay.
So we're averaging over 100 a month, but really we want to be up a lot higher than that.
Yeah.
That's basically just covering our running costs and giving us a bit to invest in improving, and giving me a little bit of a budget to burn things, play around. But no, we're getting there, and there's a lot of interest, a lot of good feedback as well, and we're still following the stoves that we started off with like 3 years ago, so checking up to see how they're going on.
Wow. Well, we're going to be a part of helping you create some growth there. That's for sure. There's a lot of people excited about what you guys are doing, and for good reasons. I wanted to go back to, earlier you shared the competition and different things. There's a lot of focus on the appropriateness from a cultural perspective, from the preferences of the women who actually use it all day long, and they're there. Can you share a little bit about that, of what some of the aspects of the stoves are that you learned and you adapted and engineered it according to feedback?
Yeah, well, that's part of the social side of the business, really. If we were just focused purely on profit, the stove would be very different. We would trim down things; it wouldn't be the quality that it is. And one of our kind of selling points and our strengths is that we tried really hard to focus on the users and their demands. So part of that has been built on my experience of living with families, but also my previous jobs with other organizations, receiving feedback all the time. My job's always been in product development. So throughout the 6 years that I've been here, I've gained a lot of feedback from people about what is required and what people like. And all of that stuff works its way back into the design of the stove. Obviously, I need to balance that with the technical side as well. So I need the lab testing that I do is really important. But I can't just design a stove that works well in the lab. It needs to be also a stove that works well for the family, and it also needs to be affordable. So all of those aspects push the design in a certain direction. But I'd say out of all of those, the heaviest weighted one is the user satisfaction. And that's really important, because we could maybe make our stove 10% more efficient in lab testing, and then find that 90% of people don't like it and use it for something else. So adoption is really, really important. And I think that's something that MPACT are doing as well with the stoves, is following up afterwards and checking in on families and making sure that they're using them and they've not given support.
Well, and I've seen in villages with my own eyes some stoves that were installed, and for whatever reason, either they're broken or not working or they don't like them. And here they have a high efficiency stove of some sort, and they're still cooking on an open fire right next to it. And so I've seen that myself, where if they don't like it, they just won't use it, and they'll go back to what they know.
Yeah, and there are various reasons why people might give up using a stove. One could be that it doesn't work exactly as they want, which is what we try and avoid with our design, or a kind of user-led design. Another could be that they didn't really want it in the first place. So there are some organizations who don't really do their work properly and just have targets of number of stoves to give away. And if someone comes along and they say, "Oh, do you want a stove?" They say, "Oh yeah, sure." So the groundwork needs to be done properly to make sure that stoves are going to people who really need them. Because part of our focus is on the market of families who can actually afford to buy stoves. So the way we see it is it's split into families living in extreme poverty who will never ever buy a product. If they can't afford to buy food, then they're never going to buy a cook stove. That's kind of one sector of the market. The other is, that sector of extreme poverty families, they're the ones who really need the support. They're the ones who need either subsidies or even donations if they're really, really poor. And that's one sector, but at the same time, there are over 1 million families who could benefit from a cook stove and could afford to buy one. But that's kind of untapped, that market, and that's what we're personally at Estufas Chispa, that's what we're trying to enter at the moment, is to make our products available with good financing options for people to buy, and at the same time producing affordable cook stoves for organizations who have presence in the communities and work with the really poor families.
Yeah. You know what I like about this partnership we have is you guys are, a young company with a vision and a heart to do things, kind of like MPACT is, and you have a different approach. You're trying to approach the problem differently, and that's one of the things we really strive to do as well. With MPACT is to how we're working in the community. Like you said, we make sure we're putting them where they're needed and understood, and people are trained, and people also have buy-in because they're participating in some level of participation financially in the acquiring of them, even if it's very minor. Like you said, a lot of those families barely can buy food. They're not going to save up, several months or maybe a year's worth of income to buy a stove at their level of income, maybe never. So that's kind of a market we can serve, while you guys, have the ability to serve the market that has the ability to purchase them themselves. But so you've seen, maybe you could describe the difference in how you see MPACT Project working in the communities versus the other organizations you've worked with. Obviously, there's NGOs and different people buying stoves from you guys to give them to people that are in need in villages. And how does that look to you?
Well, I suppose one difference is that you've got an obligation from the people who are donating the money. So it's your duty to make sure that that's spent appropriately and goes to people who really need it. On the other side, it might be an organization who receives a load of money in their budget and needs to get through that budget before the end of the year. And less pressure it's the opposite. The pressure is to use as much money as possible. And whereas your situation is that you want to use that money in the best way possible. The rain's starting again, so I'm going to go a bit closer so you can hear me. And obviously I think you guys are all aware of problems that do exist, and you've looked into that, and you've got your approach of of, behaving
Yeah.
better. And I know Eduardo has a lot of experience in that area as well, and that's kind of his job really. And from what I can tell, he's doing a good job at it.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got a big heart and a big mind for holistic community development. So it's he's very cautious to do things that are anything outside of the bounds of empowering people instead of just doing things and going through the motions. So and I really like that you guys are very concerned about that as well. Like you said, you could build a more profitable or different versions of stoves, but that's not your mission. So I really appreciate that about you guys.
Cool.
Well, thanks for joining us. I know you got a storm coming, and it's about time to wrap up anyway. So,
yeah, it won't be long before I won't be able to hear a thing.
Yeah, the rainy season changes the rules, right?
I'm gonna hold this to my ear now.
Well, let's wrap up. Anything you want to just leave everyone with before we lose you altogether to the rain?
Well, British people like talking about the rain. So I think one of the things I was going to say is that the weather's really good here, but not today. But I'll leave you with a view of the clouds coming in, if you like. But yeah, thanks a lot for your time. And I look forward to the next order and meeting you out in the field again, sweating away.
Yeah, we'll see you soon, I'm sure. And keep up the good work, my friend. And we look forward to working with you more. And thanks for joining us. And I'm sure people appreciated kind of getting the story behind the scenes. So thanks for staying late at work tonight and taking a couple minutes with us.
Great. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, Eric. Bye-bye.
Well, I just wanted to leave this tonight's webinar with a little bit of a challenge. You heard a lot of great things and a lot of from the heart and the practical realities of what Malcolm and Collin and their whole organization is doing. Great things. They're trying to do it right, and I love that we found each other and are able to do that together. So, want to pose a little challenge to you that are listening. Let's help Malcolm and his team and what they've created. Not all those laying on the factory floor need to be in homes, right? And so let's do that. And you can do that by going to impactproject.com, funding a cook stove, and taking an actionable step that's very critical and important, but also very tangible, because like you said, the effects are real, and we're doing great things together. So appreciate your support, appreciate you listening. And again, thanks Malcolm and all of your team for all you're doing. And with that, we're going to sign off for tonight, and hope you guys will join us soon, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.